Last year, the Trump administration delayed and then slashed funding for small farms and local food systems. Across the country, farmers and the communities they feed are still reeling.
It was tough.
For months, I've been reporting on the fallout and trying to understand what these cuts have meant for critical support to small farms.
It was disheartening and confusing because farmers need this.
Because we were literally building something. And now, where are we going to get the resources to continue that effort?
With no support, it's really looking pretty grim.
Last year, Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins defended the cuts, saying the programs were not meant to be long-term.
It was a COVID-era program, first of all.
She also said the cuts were aimed at rooting out waste and diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at the USDA.
Listen, we are continuing to fight the DEI, the transgender, the ideology that has really seeped into this department over the last 4 years under the prior administration.
These were COVID-era programs, but what I think is important to understand is that the Biden administration was coming in at a time when Americans had shown up at grocery stores and found empty shelves because of disrupted international supply chains. The programs they designed in response were meant to be long-term and to build infrastructure, to build back regional, local supply chains. And when the Trump administration came in and canceled a lot of this funding, those projects were maybe just getting off the ground or just right in the middle. Farmers had made investments that they were expecting to be paid for. USDA axed several programs. One was the Local Food Purchase Assistance Program, or LFPA, and its sister program, Local Food for Schools. These were designed to support small farms while getting fresh local food into schools and food banks. Mike Lavender is the policy director at the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition.
It was a really unique model where USDA was partnering with states, tribes, and other entities in a cooperative agreement model to say, hey, state, hey, tribe, hey, other entity, you know how to best work with your community, and you know where the relationships are and the connections that need to be made. And what we know from farmers is that not only allowed them a dependable market for their crop, but it also allowed them to help feed and nourish their community at food banks and other institutions.
USDA cut roughly $1 billion to those programs. We're headed to Hunter Hill Farm in Easton, Pennsylvania. They're one of many farms that lost their contract with the federal government last year. We're gonna go talk to Dan Hunter, the farmer, about what happened and what the future of the farm looks like.
This is the tomato house over here, which
nice.
just has our spring carrots in it.
Hunter says he had been struggling to break into wholesale markets for a decade. Then, he landed a local food purchase assistance, or LFPA, grant. Finally, Hunter said, he had the stability to grow and to help strengthen his regional food network.
LFPA, I mean, at the outset of it, was just like, this is too good to be true. And then we were doing it, and every week, it just felt like this is too good to be true.
He planted more tomatoes, peppers, zucchini, and cucumbers. Instead of one bed of lettuce, he planted 3. And for the first time, he could grow specifically for local food pantries while still getting paid a fair price.
You know, our big year for it was 2024, and that was, you know, an additional, I think, $44,000 in sales. So that's like almost an additional 50% on our typical sales.
But when LFPA ended abruptly, so did that momentum. Now, Hunter says he can only send the pantries whatever produce is left over, instead of growing with their needs in mind.
It's going to go back to the things that we have extra of instead of the things that we had put into our crop plant.
That shift is being felt some 20 miles away at the Eastside Food Pantry in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
And then we got a compost last year.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Hannah Cannon, the pantry manager, says the LFPA program was a game changer for them. Suddenly, their shelves were regularly stocked with healthy food.
Tomatoes, zucchini, squash, like all types of produce, seasonal produce and local produce, so it was amazing. Sometimes they would come in and they'd be like, whoa, we get all of these choices now? And I'm like, absolutely, you take what you want. They absolutely loved it. And now when they come in, they're like, oh, this is it? And I'm like, unfortunately, this is what I have right now, so.
Without the support of the LFPA, the pantry had to go back to relying mostly on grocery store leftovers and what little they can grow in their own garden.
And right now, produce in the grocery stores isn't the best, so it's not top tier. And sometimes we're throwing out maybe like 30-40% of the stuff that I get produce-wise, just because the quality is not good anymore.
The drop in produce comes as the number of people showing up at the food pantry is growing. Lenny, a local mom, says she relies on the pantry to help feed her family.
You know, produce now in supermarkets are very expensive. So seeing that here, that we're not giving produce, it's depressing, devastating, because you struggle to buy stuff, how the economics is now, and then going to food banks, that's your hopes ups, and when you see that those shelves empty, it's sad.
I was really struck by the quality of the produce that they had and that they're giving out now by no fault of their own. They're giving out a lot of food, and the people here obviously really need it and are really grateful. But the produce, I mean, I saw strawberries that were moldy. And when you contrast that with the stuff we saw growing at Dan's farm, the beautiful kale that was just coming up and ready to be harvested, and the garlic, and it was just also green and beautiful and vibrant, and like he was describing harvesting it and having Hannah come pick that up in the same day. So I was really struck by that disparity. As I spoke with more farmers, I heard the same story again and again. The LFPA program helped farms grow, feed their communities, and imagine a more sustainable, resilient future. Now, many are questioning whether that future still exists, including a network of young growers I spoke with in New York's Hudson Valley.
They keep funding traditional farms, right? And not the next generation.
I'm already seeing beginner farmers being like, oh, this is not sustainable. I'm going to do nursing.
Like, we're all scrappy and we will survive, but like, we're not going to thrive.
Back in Washington, D.C., I spoke to farm advocates about what they think the future holds. Vanessa Garcia Polanco is the Government Relations Director at the National Young Farmers Coalition. She represents a diverse group of young, regenerative farmers, the same groups disproportionately affected by the Trump administration's funding cuts. She says the consequences could last for years.
It has created a lot of mistrust in the federal government, and we have done a lot of education to see that there's actually programs that can work for them. So right now, that little bridge that was built is completely burned, and we're seeing a lot of people just having complete apathy about that any federal investments are going to work for them. And I think that's really heartbreaking and really discouraging.
The USDA did not respond to Civil Eats interview requests or to questions about our reporting. Some advocates believe programs like LFPA could return in another form. Mike Lavender of the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition points to growing bipartisan support for local food purchasing programs.
There were states where there were different spend rates, but I think ultimately when you look at the big picture, it was a program that was doing good and could have been tweaked, perhaps, to do even more good in the future. And it's actually a program where it was so successful that there is bipartisan interest in carrying it forward.
The House of Representatives recently passed a farm bill. In it was a proposal for a new USDA program modeled after LFPA, called the Local Farmers Feeding Our Communities Act. But lawmakers stopped short of guaranteeing long-term funding. I set out to find out if USDA's rapid-fire changes have impacted small farms so far. And what I heard from almost everyone I talked to is that small farms are doing worse than they were a year ago, and there's likely going to be less healthy food available for local communities, especially for people who can't afford to pay more for that food. Maybe most significantly, momentum toward rebuilding local food systems has slowed and maybe even stalled. But many of the farmers I spoke to also vowed to keep going, to build stronger local food systems, to work the land that they love, and to feed people in need, even if it is much harder now.